Got that eagle eye.
We got it.
Okay, anyways, we said that the letters, if you look at the letters of Greece, we see that it's, and we turn them around, it comes out to noi, beauty. And there's a special mitzvah with the Jewish people. Every single mitzvah, the 613 mitzvah that we do, we have to do them in the most nice and most beautiful fashion. If you can buy a beautiful candlesticks, do that. If you come to give a sacrifice in the temple, then make sure that it's a beautiful animal, a nice animal, not something that's not beautiful. So on one hand, we're similar. We have beauty and they have beauty, but there's still a difference. Why? Because their beauty is an external beauty. Greece, they're famous for external, right? They're the ones, the sports, okay man, let's work out. They're working out all day. You know, they got, this past Friday, I went on a bike ride. A friend of mine came up to me, told me there's a bike ride in the Jordan Valley. You know, I come down there in my simple clothes. I have a pair of shorts on, a shirt, and oh my God, there's 100 bike riders there. They got those uniforms on, you know, those bike shirts, and they got the bike tights, and they got all the equipment going, and they got the gloves, and they got the helmets, and they got the cameras on the helmets. Wow, they're ready to go, and they got those 30,000 shekel bikes. You know, I come on my simple 21 speed bike, you know, the seat's kind of falling apart, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I'm kind of like embarrassed to stand here, because look at these, you know, these guys strong, and it's beauty, but everything is outside. It's people that are working on their bodies, so on the outside they're beautiful, but on the inside they're not pretty at all. They're very ugly and selfish on the inside. The Jewish people are the exact opposite. Okay, the Jewish people are our beauty stems from within inside. We save our beauty for what? We save our beauty for our husband. We save our beauty for our wives. That's why a woman covers her hair, because her hair is a sign of beauty. And that's not to be shown to the outside world. It's beauty, but on the inside. It's beauty in the home, within the home. We have beauty also. It's in the temple. Everything in the temple was beautiful. For Hashem, and if you go to a synagogue, and it's a beautiful synagogue, shul, that's where our beauty comes out. Because these are things that really matter. These are internal issues. So we're similar to Greece in beauty. They have beauty and we have beauty, but it's totally different. Number 3, the leaders of the 70 nations, who are they? As we said, the Third World War will be started by Gog Magog. Who are they? They are descendants of Yefet. They are descendants of Yavan, of Greece. They will lead. They are the leaders of the world. Hey, sounds familiar. Who are the real leaders of the world? The Torah starts with the first verse. Breishit bara Elokim. In the beginning, Hashem created. There are many. The Zohar. The Zohar has a whole book. 70 different explanations of the word Breishit. 70, and we're not talking about a word. We're talking about 10, 15 pages of different explanations, 70 explanations of the word Breishit, and each explanation is approximately 10 or 15 pages. One word of the Torah, Breishit. So we're not going to go into all the explanations, but a very simple one that Rashi brings down. What does it mean, Breishit? Rashi brings down Reshit. The Jewish people are called Reshit. They are the foundation. They are the world. They are the beginning. For them, the world was created. The world was created for the Jewish people. They are the foundation. They are the reason. So, very interesting. We have these two superpowers. They're very similar, but very different. Greece versus the Jewish people. Greece versus the Jewish people. Okay, check this out. A very unusual Talmud. Put on another seatbelt. In the tractate of Psachim, 57, first side, it says in the Gemara the following. Tanu Rabbanan, the rabbis learned out, there were 4 yells, screeches in the holy temple. 4 different times there were things that were done that should not have been done in the temple, and there were cries, there were screeches because of the desecration of what these people did in the temple 4 times during history. One of them we're going to concentrate here. One of them was done by the following person. He was a Kohen Gadol, and his name is Yisachar Ish Kfar Barkai. Yisachar Ish Kfar Barkai. He was one of these. High priests, and when he worked in the temple, he would make sure to put on gloves. There's a very interesting halacha in Mishnah Brura that a person should not pray with gloves on. Why? Because that's haughty. That's considered to be not respectful for tefillah. A person should not wear gloves. Okay? So this Yisachar Ish Kfar Barkai, when he worked in the temple with sacrifices, he didn't want to get his hands, he thought he was getting his hands dirty. Instead of understanding it as this is beauty, this is doing Hashem's will, and there's nothing to be shy about, there's nothing to be all kinds of, oh my God. So he would put on gloves, because he didn't want to really deal with it. So the Gemara says that because of how he would do his service in the temple, so to speak, cried out. So the Gemara asks, what happened to this guy in the end? What happened? What happened to the guy? Let's take it one step at a time. It says the following. The king and the queen, they had a dispute amongst them. Okay, what was the dispute? Really important stuff over here. Now, what tastes better? The meat of a sheep tastes better, or the meat of a goat? Oh my God, don't you have anything to argue about? I mean, well, this is really interesting. This couple, the king and the queen, they have nothing better to do than discuss. They're arguing about it. What meat is more tastier? Okay, I mean, maybe call up the Hilton Hotel. Okay, is the chef in there? Is the chef of the Hilton around here? I want to ask you a question here. What do they call it? Gastronomy?
Gastronomy.
What? Gastronomy, right. So, what's going on over here? So who do they ask? They said, hey, we got a great idea. We'll ask this guy Yisachar, because he's hanging around all day. He hangs around animals all day because he's in the temple and he does all this sacrificing. Hey, this is a great guy. They never thought of going to the chef. They never had thought about asking housewives. What do you think about it? So they ask him, Yisachar, they ask him his opinion. What's tastier, a sheep or a goat?
A lamb or a kid.
Oh yeah?
It's a lamb or a kid, not a big goat, not a big sheep.
Okay, lamb or a kid. See, Avram, now you understand why you're here today. Help me out here. So they asked the question, and instead of being diplomatic about it and saying, you know what, both of them are great. You have a king and a queen here. They're not very nice people. You know, if you go against their opinion, they might have you put to death. But he didn't think about that, and he lifts up his hand kind of like, you idiots, don't you know the answer? He lifts up his hands and says, the answer is simple. The answer is simple. What? The meat of a sheep.
No, kid.
Kid.
A goat, a young goat.
No.
That's what the queen.
No.
Queen.
I'm talking about Issachar, the priest. His answer was very simple. He said it's the sheep, not the goats. That was his answer. And they said, how do you know? It says very simple. Because in our Torah, it's written that in the morning sacrifice, one brings a kevis, one brings a sheep. And in the afternoon sacrifice, a person brings also another sheep. So God tells us to bring a sheep. God knows what he's talking about. God would not tell us to bring a sheep if it was not tastier than a goat. So therefore, that's the true answer. Well, they weren't too happy about that. And they said, you know what? Because you don't have respect for us, you made this motion. You know, there's all kinds of motions that people make, that what we call today flipping people off, you know. So I guess he was the first. They also stole this from the Jews. Okay? People think that flipping off came from the Gentiles, but they don't realize that this was also from a Jew, the first flip off. So it came from this guy Yisachar. So they said, you know what? Because you used your hand in a disrespectful manner, choose which. We're going to cut off your hand. Okay, we're going to cut off your right hand. So, anyways, Yisachar, he was a good businessman. He reeled and dealed his way, and he gave a little bit of bribe money to the person that was in charge of cutting off hands in the empire. And instead of cutting off his right hand, they agreed to cut off his left hand because he bribed them. Anyways, the king and the queen, they noticed a couple weeks later that he still had his right hand, and they had asked for his right hand to be removed. So what did they say? Now we're going to remove your right hand. So now this guy Yisachar, you know, he doesn't have any hands left. Anyways, that was the end of it. What's going on over here? What in the world is the Gemara telling us about this discussion? Who cares? This is crazy. A husband and his wife, a king and a queen, they don't have anything to talk about. There's no wars. There's no enemies facing them. There's no security issues in their empire. All they have to talk about is what's tastier, which meat is tastier, from a sheep or from a goat. So one of the commentators turns this whole thing around. This was a very serious discussion. What was the discussion? If you look in the Torah, in many, many sources, when the Torah uses an animal to describe the Jewish people, the Torah uses a sheep. The Jewish people are likened to a sheep. When the Torah wants to describe Greece specifically, or the Gentiles, they use the description of a goat. And that's why, if you think about it, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day of the year, when we're trying to pass judgment, and the forces of evil, the forces of Esav, of Edom, they're trying to get the Jewish people out. They're trying to make sure that we will not pass the judgment day. The Gentile world is trying to do their best that we will not pass judgment day. What are the sacrifices on that day? The sacrifices on that day are goats. Those are the stars of the show, because they represent the nations of the world. So what was going on here? Unbelievable Torah. What was going on here was there was a discrepancy, there was a machloket, there was a disagreement. Who is the important force of the world? The king said, what's more important is the Jewish people. And the queen said, no, what's more important is the Gentile nation, are the nations of the world. This was the discrepancy. And then when the Jews said that the Jewish people, they're the reason, raison d'être, they're the reason that God created the world, that bothered them, and that's why they cut off his hands. That's bothered them, because he said right away that the most important force of the world, of course, are the Jewish people. He didn't have to think about that. He didn't have to think about that. He didn't say both are correct. There's pluses to the Jewish people. There are pluses to the Gentile nations. There are things that we learn from the Jews. There are things that we learn from the nations. He didn't say that. He said right away. There's no question here. It is the sheep. It is the Jewish people. And that was their discrepancy. The first part of this class will just end at the following. We said there are 3 days of fasting in a row. 8th, because the Torah was translated into Greek. 9th, today, because JC was born. Yeshu, Yimach Shemo B'Zichro. Okay, he was born today on the 9th. Even though it says in Halacha and other places, we don't know why we fast. We don't know why we fast. Why does it say we don't know why? We know why. Because they couldn't put it in. Because of the censorship and because of the delicate manner, they couldn't put in that the reason why we fast is because JC was born. The third fast is when the Babylonians, when they surrounded the city of Jerusalem for 2.5 years. Now, let's break this down. Our first summarize what we've done so far. If we look at these 3 dates, are they connected or they're just haphazard? We know everything's connected. Listen to this. On the 8th day of Tevet, yesterday, on the 8th day of Tevet, the Greeks came to the Jewish people and said, you know what? We want to be equal. We want to be equal to you. Not better, not worse. We want to be equal to you. We know that if you were willing to become a Hellenist, if the Jewish people were willing to become Hellenists, they got along fine with the Greeks. The Greeks did not come to kill the Jewish people like they did in the time of Haman. They did not come to kill the Jewish people. They were willing to live with us as long as we said we're on the same level. We are the same. There's no difference. I don't have a circumcision and you don't have a circumcision. Because you have a circumcision doesn't make you any better or any worse than me. We are equal. Put that aside. We don't want that circumcision. There's no Shabbat because there's no difference. All days are equal. Don't tell us that there's a day that is more special than all the other days. No. We want you to be on our wave. Our wave is equality, is democracy. Everyone is equal. That was the 8th. They translated the Torah into Greek, which means now everyone has the Torah. You have the Torah, we have the Torah, we are equal. The Torah belongs to us just like it belongs to you, equal. Okay, that's not a bad start, perhaps. What happens on the 9th? The 9th, JC is born. What does he say? He says, you know what? We're not equal. We are the replacement of the Jewish people. Now we're going to start a different date. Those Jews, they have their own dates? They have their own years? No. Now it's year 1. We're going to start, now it's 2014. It's 2014, the last day of 2014. 2014 of what? 2014 of JC. Wow. I thought the world was 5,775. Where did we get to this small number of 2015? Oh yeah. JC says we're starting from new. What was doesn't exist anymore. Them Jewish people? No. Torah? No. Those were the days with the Greeks. Those days are over. Equality? No. We are the chosen people. We have a new Torah. It's called the New Testament. We have a new calendar. We're on year 0, year 1. Okay, so now they are the chosen people and we're down. It started in equality on the 8th. The 9th, today's fast for the birth of JC. What happens on the 10th? The 10th is that more than words that we're better than you, actions come. The Babylonians represent, we see for the first time, we know that in Egypt, there was no assimilation. There were Jews that might have been assimilated ideas, but they did not join up with any Egyptians. They did not marry. There were no intermarriage. We see in Babylonia, what do we see? That when the Jewish people came back after 70 years, not a long time, 70 years, they come back, and what are they now? Now they're all intermarried. They come back to this. They come back to the land of Israel after being 70 years with the Babylonians, and they're now intermarried with the Babylonians. And now they no longer speak Hebrew. One second, how did you forget that language in 70 years? Not a long time. They already forgot the language. They spoke Ashdodi. They spoke all kinds of funky languages. But they didn't speak Lashon HaKodesh. They didn't speak the Holy Tongue. They had forgotten it. They were so, we see for the first time in history, we see a tremendous amount of assimilation. And therefore it leads to this eventual destruction of the first temple by the Babylonians. So we have on the 8th, we have equality, democracy. We just want to be like you. But that doesn't last much, that doesn't last for long. And then shortly after that, we are better than you. The nations of the world, the Christians, the JC, we are above you. We have the new Torah. We are the new chosen people. But it doesn't stay like that too long either. It's not just words anymore. It's actions into total assimilation of the Jewish people in times of Babylonia, which eventually lead to the destruction of the Jewish people.